A man takes the last bus home from work every day. For 3 consecutive days, he sees a woman in white with a large suitcase sitting quietly at the bus stop, seemingly waiting for something and continuously tapping the seat with her hand. On the 4th day, the man approaches her, asking why she remains there since the last bus has already passed and taxis rarely come by. He suggests she call a taxi, but she reveals she lost her phone. The man offers his phone, which is damaged but still able to make calls. However, the woman does not take it and instead asks if he does not recognize her. Thinking she might be unwell mentally, the man bids her goodbye and goes home. On the 5th day, it is raining heavily, and the woman is still sitting motionless at the bus stop. Seeing her soaked, the man offers his umbrella, saying his home is not far and he can run. The woman expresses feeling cold and asks if she can come to his home. Pitying her, the man agrees and takes her home. He gives her a towel to dry off, but when she returns it, he is terrified to see her nails growing backwards, explaining the tapping sound. Meanwhile, a sudden disturbance occurs in the ICU of a hospital. A man bursts in, and nurse Kwon Young-ji asks if he needs help. He inquires about the morgue. Just then, an alarm goes off from a patient's ventilator. Kwon Young-ji calls for help, and fortunately, it is only a dislodged oxygen tube. After it is reconnected, the patient stabilizes. When Kwon Young-ji looks back, the man has disappeared. A man wraps himself tightly in a blanket in his room, still shivering from the cold. What irritates him more than the cold is a dog that keeps barking. He opens the door and yells for the dog to stop, as the noise is driving him to the brink of collapse. But how could a dog understand his words? The man, named Jung Won-young, owns a lighting store that only opens at night. The store attracts a variety of customers. Some come specifically to buy bulbs, while others just browse and leave. This includes a man asking about the morgue and another continually disturbed by the dog's barking, a woman in wet red heels, and Hyun-ju, a student who must buy a bulb every day after school. Hyun-ju is a regular and knows the store owner well. They often chat before she heads home. One day, Hyun-ju tells the owner she might have seen a ghost. It was too dark to see clearly, but she's sure it wasn't a normal person. The owner suggests that she might be seeing strangers that others cannot, who blend into the crowd but have some distinct differences. He advises that if she encounters strange people, she should pretend not to see them. At the home of the man who catches the last bus, the woman in white opens her suitcase to reveal a row of knives, selecting a pair of scissors. After Hyun-ju leaves, the lighting store owner's face appears aged, his true age unknown. As Hyun-ju reaches her home, she sees the white-dressed woman leaving with a heavy suitcase, unaware of the blood dripping from it. On a rainy night, a girl kindly shares her umbrella with a woman without one. As they walk, the girl notices the woman's hair suddenly growing longer and her walk becoming a limp. Hyun-ju recalls the store owner's words, "If you encounter strange people, pretend you haven't seen them." Hyun-ju tries to stay calm, but the woman beside her keeps growing rapidly. Scared, Hyun-ju runs to the store to seek help from the owner. The owner tells her to hurry home. Obediently, Hyun-ju runs back, while the owner simply removes his glasses and glances at the woman, who immediately turns and leaves. In an alley near the lighting store, a writer rents a cheap and quiet house. It suits her needs except for one locked room. Soon after moving in, the lights in the house start to fail repeatedly. The writer initially thinks it's just because the house is old. Additionally, every evening after school, a boy loudly singing as he passes by disrupts her concentration. One day, unable to bear it, she opens her window to ask why he always sings so loudly, but the boy runs away scared. The writer finds this odd and decides to take a bath and go to bed. While drying her hair, she accidentally sees a strand on the floor that is clearly not hers, chilling her to the bone. The writer goes to the mirror and sees another person in the room through the reflection, or more accurately, something that isn't human. The ongoing issue with the lights seems to be caused by this entity. Meanwhile, the boy, in a panic, runs to the corner and meets the woman in white dragging a suitcase. Thinking he has found a normal person, he approaches her and explains his desire to go to the lighting store, hoping she will accompany him because the road is too dark and frightening. He needs to find the store to get home. As they pass the writer's house, the boy tells the woman about the strange encounter with the woman who spoke to him from the window, mentioning how terrifying it was to see another figure behind her. The woman in white wants to knock on the door, but the boy quickly grabs her and tells her not to go. Then he notices her nails growing backwards, realizing she is not normal either. Seeing the boy's panic, the woman tells him they are not so different, revealing that his feet also grow backwards. Confused, the boy starts to run away unsteadily. The writer sees something unclean in her room and decides to leave the house quickly, but she can't remember the door code. She takes a hammer to break the door, only managing to shatter the glass and starts shouting for help with no response from outside. No matter how far the boy runs, he always ends up back at the writer's door. The woman in white drags her suitcase to the lighting store, with blood dripping continuously from it. The owner asks what she needs. Before she can reply, another man arrives, claiming to be a police officer in pursuit of a suspect. Blood continuously leaks from the suitcase, trailing behind her. Police officer Yang Xiong-sik, also in the store, witnesses the scene. Yang Xiong-sik calls out to her, and the woman in white feels a sudden tightness. Unexpectedly, Yang Xiong-sik takes off his raincoat and drapes it over her, mistaking her situation for menstruation. The woman in white leaves the store with her suitcase, while Yang Xiong-sik turns back to ask the owner if he has seen the suspect. He describes the suspect's eyes as peculiar, reacting to bright light like a cat's. Suddenly, Yang Xiong-sik's eyes start to uncontrollably rotate. Yang Xiong-sik is a very skilled police officer. About a month ago, a woman living alone in an apartment continually heard knocking at her door. Thinking it was a persistent suitor, she yelled that she didn't want to date or have any relationship with him. When the knocking finally stopped, she couldn't resist opening the door. She saw a man squatting at the end of the hallway, who quickly approached her, and then something fell. At a bus station, a man stealthily boarded a bus. Hearing the driver announce the imminent departure, he felt relieved. However, just as the bus doors closed, Yang Xiong-sik appeared beside the bus. The man had to put on a hat. Yang Xiong-sik ordered everyone off the bus, and the man tried to hide behind the seat. But Yang Xiong-sik had already spotted him and slowly approached. Although arrested, the man displayed a disdainful expression, which quickly faded when he realized the woman he had killed was also on the bus. Yang Xiong-sik called nearby colleagues and took the man to the police station. That night, a solitary elderly person was watching TV at home when someone knocked on the door. Soon after, the police received a report that the elderly person had died, initially thought to be from an acute myocardial infarction. However, Yang Xiong-sik suspected otherwise. The elderly person's face showed no sign of pain, and although right-handed, the remote was on the left side with only the channel button worn. The TV was playing a recorded program. While eating jjajangmyeon, Yang Xiong-sik accidentally got sauce on his hand, leading to a realization. The supposed age spot near the elderly person's mouth was actually jjajangmyeon sauce. A rectangular mark on the floor likely came from a delivery box of jjajangmyeon, indicating someone had visited shortly before the death. Yang Xiong-sik began visiting nearby noodle shops and eventually focused on one particular restaurant. This store is strange. It has no delivery app and no phone number on the noodle shop's sign, yet the owner often delivers food himself. Yang Xiong-sik asked the owner if he was responsible for the elderly man's death, but the owner denied knowing anything about it. Despite lacking evidence, Yang Xiong-sik was sure the owner was involved in the death and kept a close eye on him. One evening, Yang Xiong-sik caught the owner chasing a woman. He leapt forward and stopped him, restraining the owner and questioning if he planned to continue killing. The owner was surprised and asked how Yang Xiong-sik could see the woman. When Yang Xiong-sik asked if the woman was hurt, she slowly stood up and turned around. She was the woman who had been killed earlier. The owner then pushed Yang Xiong-sik away and tried to flee, but was stopped. The two struggled, and Yang Xiong-sik noticed the owner's eyes had changed color, resembling a cat's. Yang Xiong-sik then went to a lighting store. Meanwhile, two critically injured car accident victims arrived at the hospital, and the head nurse prepared beds. A woman was arranging clothes for the deceased when the body suddenly made a noise, startling her. She quickly called the mortician, who calmed her by explaining it was just gas escaping the body. To ease her nerves, the mortician suggested she step outside for air. Once she left, the mortician calmly began trimming the deceased's nails and conversed with them. Having been a mortician for many years, he could hear the voices of the dead. He patiently advised the deceased that death was not the end, but a journey to a new place. After arranging everything, the mortician placed the deceased in the morgue drawer, telling her to rest there until he could return after completing the procedures. Elsewhere, Kwon Young-ji, working the night shift, arrived at the hospital and met an older man in the elevator. She asked which floor he needed, and he replied the 8th floor. Kwon Young-ji informed him that the 8th floor housed critical patients and was closed to visitors at night. The man then asked if these patients would wake up. Kwon Young-ji responded that she couldn't guarantee their awakening as it depended on the patient's will. Hearing this, the man began to cry bitterly, his tears flowing more fiercely than a downpour. The water level in the elevator rose rapidly with his sobbing, soon submerging Kwon Young-ji. Fortunately, the elevator reached the 8th floor, and as the doors opened, the man and the tears disappeared. After a severe car accident, Kwon Young-ji awoke with the ability to see people invisible to others, eventually realizing these were individuals teetering between life and death. That day, Hyunju returned home from school to find her mother sitting in the dark living room, silent despite her attempts at conversation. Her mother remained quiet because the mortician had stuffed cotton in her mouth. Her body lay motionless at her funeral. Unbeknownst to Hyunju, someone stood motionlessly at her doorstep, watching her. A woman discovered her nails grew backwards because she wanted to remain forever interlocked with her lover's fingers. It turns out the woman in white didn't intend to kill the man on the bus, but to stitch him up and save him. That day, the man planned to propose to the woman in white, but she hesitated because she was deaf and mute. The man's mother disapproved of the marriage. Meanwhile, right after getting off the subway, the fiancé hurriedly texted her, saying he was about to take a bus to meet her. Soon, the man boarded the bus, and at the same time, the eerie figures seen earlier appeared again, having previously shared the same bus ride. Unexpectedly, the bus malfunctioned and was involved in a severe accident. The woman, heading to meet her fiancé, witnessed the scene and quickly dialed 119, but as a deaf mute, she couldn't report the emergency. Soon, the injured were rushed to the hospital. The fiancé's spine was completely broken, and the driver was barely alive. When the woman arrived at the hospital, her fiancé was near death. To her distress, the mother blamed her for her son's imminent death. The woman burst into tears, but just then, she received a message from the father saying her son was still alive. Tragically, by then, the woman had already hanged herself. When she saw the message, it was too late. In life, the woman was a deaf-mute girl who always waited for her boyfriend at the familiar platform. They communicated by touching objects, and even after her death, she continued to tap on chairs with her nails so her boyfriend would recognize her. That night, she met the man she longed for at the platform, but he seemed to have completely forgotten her. However, just a few steps away, he suddenly fell. In reality, special cleaners arrived at the woman's house. Just as they prepared to tidy up, a strange noise came from inside. Thinking it was a hallucination, they listened closely and heard a clear sound. The cleaners urged their colleagues to leave quickly, suspecting that the deceased might still be in the house. Indeed, the woman was in the room stitching up her boyfriend, who slowly got up. The next day, the boyfriend met the woman again at the platform. Despite her tapping on the chair, he did not recognize her. Soon after, he fell again. The woman then took him to a cinema. A girl noticed something odd, but when she got up to leave, they had vanished. Meanwhile, the woman continued to stitch up her boyfriend, hoping to revive him by repeatedly exerting all her strength. Just as the girl entered the elevator, she saw a blood-covered man and ran in panic. But the man relentlessly followed her. It turned out he was the neighbor next door. Relieved, the girl relaxed. But then he suddenly stopped her to ask when she had moved in, as he couldn't remember anything from before. As the girl was about to answer, the man's body suddenly bent in half. Terrified, she quickly hid at home and peeked through the door crack. Her mother pulled her away, and when the daughter asked why, her mother's recent behavior seemed odd. Yet, her mother asked her to continue buying light bulbs. The daughter complained about her mother's lack of care, feeling isolated with no friends or classmates to talk to. Meanwhile, the mother felt helpless, not knowing how to explain the truth to her daughter. That night, Yang Xiongshik, a former excellent detective, discovered his broken lighter suddenly working again. His wife was 4 months pregnant, but her belly wasn't showing, which the doctor explained was due to a missed miscarriage. The news deeply saddened him, especially since he had already chosen a name for the child. but apologized to his wife for his constant absence due to work. Since his death and arrival in this alley, he realized he couldn't leave, and it was perpetually night here, with frequent unexplained falls. He hurried to a lighting store, questioning his surroundings for the first time. The store owner, silent, just removed his glasses, revealing cat-like eyes. It turned out the alley near the lighting store was actually the river Styx, and the owner was the ferryman of souls.